Welcome to another episode of the Playful Lens. We are so delighted to have Tracy McElheron joining us, and we're so looking forward to hearing what she has to say. Tracy, you're very welcome to the Playful Lens.
Thank you very much, the two of you, for asking me on.
We're delighted to have you with us. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely, yeah. So I worked in early childhood education for over 25 years. I worked in a community setting on the floor, working with young children. And for the last 7 years, I've been a lecturer in early childhood education. And one of my areas of expertise, I'm happy to say, is play. So, and it's one of the topics that I've been teaching for longest. So, and I always think of it as my baby. That module is my favorite, I think. Yeah. So that's who I am anyway.
So you're a great guest for us to have on. You know what you're talking about.
Thanks. Well, I mean, it's such a big part of my life at play, and it always has been. I mean, it goes without saying that as children, it's always a part of our lives, you know. Although I have to say, in recent times, that's definitely changed, and it's something that I'd like to speak a little bit more about. But then, obviously, working with young children, it was everything that I did, and it was such a good motivator. It was such a way of connecting with children, and building relationships with them. And really, it was the kind of the secret of my success. Although I studied for years and I did lots of courses and I, upskilled, really kind of what brought me real success in my work with children and families was just being a bit playful and, and kind of really engaging with it and making an idiot of myself and not minding that. And then of course my thing now is to really introduce students to the power of play, and really trying to get them to recognize that engaging in play is going to be one of the most valuable skills that they will have in their personal practice. So obviously it's a really important part of my life, and it's something that I talk about on a regular basis, and something I feel really passionate about, and something that I really feel that lots of people, not that they have misunderstandings about or they don't know about it, but they've forgotten. They've forgotten what it's like to play. They've forgotten what it feels like to be engaged in play. They've forgotten what it feels like to be a child really immersed in play. And so I think that part of my role with adults, especially, children don't need to be, taught that, but part of my role with adults is to lift the veil and say, remember that feeling, remember that power, remember that sense of achievement, and remember that sense of confidence, remember that sense of connection, remember that sense of calm, and all these things that play can bring to young children and indeed to adults as well. So
Mm.
when I first start a class and the play module, the first thing I always do is I try and get people to reconnect with those feelings of play and how they engaged in play. And so the first thing we always do is we swap stories of play as young children. Now that's a really interesting, even that alone is interesting, and I'll tell you why. Because we have two main cohorts where I work in Maynooth. And one is a flexi program, which is geared towards people who have been working in the sector. So they're very often people who are a little bit older, who've been in practice for quite a few years, a bit like myself, a few grey hairs here and there. And then the other cohort are school leavers. So they're completely different conversations. If I had to think about how play has changed over the course of the last few years, those two sets of conversations alone tells me that it's really changed. And, there's very familiar stories to me with the flexi group. And then very often there's a little bit of a disconnect between myself, the kind of conversation I'm having about play, and the conversation that younger adults are having about play. So I think that there are three main areas where play has changed, and I'm hearing that from individuals, from groups of people. Three very basic areas, and that's place, time, and things. And really, that just kind of encompasses everything. People is the only thing that's not in there. So, if I think about my own childhood, I was thinking about this a lot today because obviously I was coming to talk to you two lovely people, and I was thinking about the first thing I always say is one of our favorite places to play when we were younger. Myself and my brother, it was just the two of us, and we were two really, really quiet children, very, very reserved children. And there was few families on our road, and we lived quite close to what would be regarded now as city centre Dublin. And we were the youngest on the road. And all the children on our road used to go and play in a derelict factory up the road. Okay, so let me just say that out loud again, a derelict factory. So that alone will tell you the difference between play years ago and play today. And we were like a tribe that marched up to that factory, and there was a mixed age group, definitely different personalities, different family structures. As I said, myself and my brother Emmett, very quiet, reserved children. Who did tag along a lot now, I have to say. We would just kind of follow the older kids. So it was mixed age group, mixed personalities, and mixed, of course, family culture as well, which is such a huge thing as well. But really, we disappeared up there for hours and hours and hours. And there was definitely no adult supervision. We were scaffolded by older children who had been there before us and for longer than us, and knew the pitfalls, and were able to guide us in, what was kind of safe, what was good to do, what was fun, where to find the best stuff. And it was a really collaborative, um, fun activity that was without the glare of adult, eyes. We were perfectly well able to make sure we were all kind of safe and okay. And yes, there were accidents here and there, but thankfully nobody lost a limb. And it was really, really rewarding. But I think that was and the other place we played a lot. We were lucky because we had really big gardens, and ours was the biggest garden, and we had lots of apple trees, and so lots of children came into to garden, and we made a big den in the garden, and so again, so much freedom. And the big thing about all that was the really main difference was totally unstructured. I mean, we went out, you just didn't know what was going to happen. We probably knew where we were going because we've been there lots of times before, but unstructured. And that's a huge difference between play from years ago and play now, is that the amount of play, and I think, in fairness to parents, who organise lots of activity, I always think if you want to see how a child's play is going to, pan out over the day, just have a look at their parents' diary, because it's probably their parents going to bring them here, bring them there, whether it's play dates or activities or clubs, it's all very organised by adults. And, that's a huge difference. Years ago, unstructured. And children really, really need unstructured play for such important reasons, for so many reasons. It's kind of that thing where I just don't know where to start, that way. Like, I honestly don't know where to start. So anyway, place, then time. I mean, the other thing was, you went out, children played outdoors a lot, and you went out for significant periods of time, and you really came back when it was dark, you were hungry. That was essentially it.
And it's not what they say, come home when the lights come on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I mean, and nothing would really, like, tiffs or falls or injuries, unless it was really significant, that wouldn't bring you home. You had lots of freedom in how much time you chose to spend at an activity. I don't like using the word activity, because activity has a certain framing within early childhood anyway. That kind of activity means organized by an adult. So I'm want to use that expression when I'm talking about play in general. So timing is another thing that's changed, and then of course things, toys. I mean, years ago, very open ended, created. Toys now, they're manufactured, they're electronic, they're educational, and essentially kind of presented to children. Whereas, yourself years ago, well, maybe you don't know yourself. I'm obviously a lot older than you too, but, toys were very much, I mean, don't get me wrong, it was great when you got a toy and you got a present of a toy. Children really kinda made their own toys. Now when I have those conversations with adults, with students, it's interesting to hear the stories of adults who come from other places. For instance, you would have perhaps much younger adults who still get to do lots of that stuff because they come from a different context. And let's say, for instance, I was listening to just lovely stories from a woman who originally is from Russia, and the stories she told were very similar to mine. Well, she's not younger than me, but her stories of creating and creativity and, the kind of things that she made and herself and her friends made, or even the imagination that she used when she was just using ordinary everyday items, sticks and stones, but what in her own mind and in her own play she created with that stuff was just fantastic. So I think that very definitely these stories are really getting through to me that play has changed a lot, and I don't think it's anything that that it's not a shock. It's very visible, around. But then the other thing that has really made me think about how play has changed is looking at the cohorts of children that I've been working with in the last few years and how those cohorts have changed. And what has changed a lot is their kind of skills and their abilities. And I think there's a certain lack of, and I hate to talk about groups of people and generalizations, children as much as anybody else. But I think it's fairly true to say that in recent cohorts, I'll talk about cohorts rather than speaking about people in a disparaging way. But I see a real lack of gumption in young children who
Mm.
are a little bit flummoxed when things don't go their way, things don't work, simple stuff they can't reach, they can't open. Where, years ago, children were so invested and enthusiastic in play, had such ownership in play that they got on with things and, they problem solved to make sure that play continued. Whereas now I think, and I would imagine, and research tells us that the impact that children playing with technology and on screens has on their ability to focus, to concentrate, to problem solve, it's having a serious impact. And I think that's very visible in, the children that I've worked with recently anyway.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
would absolutely agree. I would agree with everything you've said there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's very passive to
yeah,
just to play on a screen, isn't it?
yeah,
Whereas when you
Yeah.
think about the curiosity that we naturally fall into when
yeah,
you have a stick and you're like, what can I do with this? How can I use it? I need to, because we had to be creative and curious all
Yeah.
the time. Our brains naturally worked like that. So when we hit a problem, it was like, what can I do here?
Yeah.
Whereas if you don't practice that creativeness, if you
yeah.
don't practice that curiosity, grow that disposition and grow that curiousness, it makes perfect sense that we're going to get flummoxed when we're hit with something because we don't naturally default to,
Yeah. 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 I totally agree with you there. And I think another area where it's literally very visible is in fundamental movement skills.
Mhm.
And I mean, I've seen very young, like quite young children, but at the kind of age and stage of development that you would expect them to be able to, we'll say, jump from a standing position or hop on one leg, and quite a lot of children are not able to do those kind of things, which would have been unheard of years ago. And of course, that's another way that play has changed, that it used to be so physically active. And between children not going outdoors as much as they
Mhm.
have done in the past, and that's because of perceived safety concerns, but also because play is far more now rooted in technology and in handheld devices. So
Mm.
literally physical movement it doesn't always come automatically with play these days. Whereas if you think about it, years ago, it would have been impossible nearly to think of children playing and not seeing lots of physical movement. So physical skills and those fundamental movement skills were really honed in all that physical activity and physical play. Sometimes thing I think as well that is very important about outdoor play, and people don't always think about it, is outdoor play, and especially in places, where it's very, we're in a very natural setting. Like even if you think of my derelict factory, it's a place. Being outdoors is a very sensory experience. So you feel the weather, you feel the wind, the rain. You can smell things. The light is different. The movement is different. So all the sensory input is different outdoors than indoors, and very often it's a lot bigger, it's a lot kind of busier, there's a lot more input, and children get opportunities to process that input in different ways. And I think that children now are suffering because they haven't had the opportunity to either build those physical skills, which of course then is also linked to confidence and self esteem, but also because of the lack of opportunity to engage with sensory input in a different way. And that can very often, I think, manifest in children having difficulties with self regulation and even just kind of coping with relationships or with different situations.
It makes perfect sense, and I
Mm.
came across, lab school in New York, actually, where with younger kids, what they found, because they hooked them up to whatever ways they were scanning their brains, and that
Yeah,
active when we're physically moving, that was creating growth neurons in the prefrontal cortex, so helping us focus, helping us concentrate, our
yeah,
impulse control. All of that part of our brain was being developed through the children's active play.
yeah,
So you yeah, we're at such
Mhm.
a loss
Yeah.
when that starts to decline.
yeah,
But you
totally.
can really see the difference. Like, you can nearly tell the children who
Mhm.
engage in outdoor physical play
Yeah.
Yeah,
as opposed to the children, it is quite obvious.
yeah,
Like, I would see a lot in school that you can tell
Yeah.
the
yeah,
children
Oh, yeah.
who are
yeah.
engaged in physical play.
Absolutely, I totally agree. And the other thing is there's significant research that tells us that children are less sensitive to conflict in an outdoor situation. So they
Oh,
let things go, and so in actual fact, conflict resolution is far easier in an outdoor situation and with outdoor play. And things that would really niggle them indoors, which could kind of lead to arguments or, fractious interactions. They just don't happen in outdoor play. And I think that really
yeah.
Yeah.
kind of really tells us, gives us, the value of that outdoor active play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't, it's not that I necessarily value active play more than other types of play. I mean, I really value sensory play. I really value sociodramatic play. I just think that active play is our children's ability to play in a way that they used to is having a detrimental effect on children at the moment.
Yeah.
Um, and I
Yeah.
think that active play is one of the ways that play has kind of changed most.
So I yeah, and I saw something recently where it was like children have changed, and it's like, no, the environment has changed.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what's impacting our
Yeah.
children's development.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember at my junior infants, we were going outdoors for outdoor play, and I had one little fella, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm just going to dig. I'm just going digging," and
Yeah.
he got some joy out of that. But we often talk about how it's very hard as a teacher to value that, and I think you've given us like lovely insights around the benefits there of active play, Tracy.
Oh, I hope so. And I do think that, generally speaking, there's a lack of understanding in Ireland anyway. And I want to say, particularly with parents, but again, I don't want to kind of, generalize about a whole group of people. But I think there is a lack of understanding or a lack of appreciation of the huge connections between academic learning and this holistic learning. And that, like people often say, you have to put these foundations in to build on the academic stuff, but like in my view, that's kind of a hierarchical thing, really, still. I mean, we all know foundations are really important, but it's when something is seen as going on top of, it's like it's a bit like about getting better and better and better and better. Whereas to me, it's more like a kind of an interconnection, where yeah, absolutely, there that this foundational stuff is really key to enabling children to develop all those academic concepts. But that doesn't mean all this stuff isn't academic. It is academic. It's part of the whole package,
Mhm.
in
Mhm.
in my view.
Yeah, no, I
But I think
agree.
it's also really important. A guy called, and I'm assuming it's a guy, it could be a woman now. I have to put my hand up there. I'm not too sure. And their name is, I think it's Gooch is the name. But Gooch talks about this idea of hijacking play. Gooch talks about, um, how play has, people are beginning to recognize now, it has been established now that play is fundamental for children's learning. But Gooch says, well, yeah, that's great, but we have to value play for play's sake as well. We can't just
Mhm.
hijack it for learning. And that learning is kind of something that happens organically through play. So we as adults, we don't have to kind of, manipulate it or shape it in a certain way. And we can't only look at learning outcomes. We also have to look at children's well-being, their right to play, the fact that it is a fundamental part of who they are. And there are different, ways of looking at play that can always be critiqued. People want to, I think, theorists or researchers, they want to really be able to say, "Whoa, play is fantastic, and this is the reason why." First of all, it's like, "Oh, it's really important for learning," and then somebody else says, "Oh, well, that's children's work. That's who they are. That's." But of course, there's always critiques then, and so there's this idea that play is children's work. That's who they are and what they do, and which is true. Then there's an idea that when you're looking at play through an adult's lens then, and really when you start talking about work, are you talking about children as human becomings? So are we hijacking play to make sure children are healthy and are knowledgeable, have academic skills, will be good workers, get up early, go to bed when they should. Mm, and, we want play to benefit children to be the best they can be and the best they want to be. Unfortunately, while I absolutely value play, and I think it's really important that we all recognize how important it is, I do think it's a shame when it's talked about in terms of, future outcomes, when really we
Yeah.
should really be remembering that play is intrinsically important for the here and the now, and for the child in front of us who is
Yeah.
thriving in the middle of it, and I think that needs to be recognized and valued.
Important. Yeah.
That's so important. And it's such a grey area, isn't it, as a
Yeah.
teacher? Because when play came in initially as part of Ashter, we were mapping it to learning outcomes,
Yeah.
and I put
Yeah,
these results out so they link up with these learning outcomes. Yes, there's a bit of freedom there to, go whatever way you want, but I suppose in the back of my head, it's always like, well, what learning outcomes can they achieve? I was always looking for that.
yeah,
Our new curriculum has
Yeah.
child-led play
yeah,
For all children.
for all children
Yeah.
from
yeah,
juniors to sixth. And I think what you said there, I want to shout it from the rooftops, because play for play's sake,
yeah,
if I can't map it onto a learning outcome in the future, and if I'm not getting in there to manage it and direct
yeah,
it,
yeah,
there's a value
Yeah.
to that.
yeah, yeah. And the marker of how valuable play is, how engaged, and as I say, you can see children thriving in it. And
Yeah.
there's a very interesting guy called Ferry Levers, who is a Belgian academic, and he developed this thing called the Leuven scale of involvement. And he developed it as a way of gauging how equality in early childhood educational settings. But really, what I thought was really fantastic about his scale is that it looks at how engaged children are, how involved they are. So not necessarily, what they're learning. Can they do this now? Can they do
Mhm.
that now? No, no, no. It's about how focused they are, how the concentration they're showing, how much fun they're having. And it's about looking at the whole child. It's about looking at, where their focus is, their expression, their body movement. And um, I think that's a really good way of gauging,
Yeah.
how good a setting is. If there are
Yeah.
children, in a setting who are so fully immersed in a moment, well, isn't that a really good marker of, how good your practice is? I think it really is.
I'm going to put you on the spot now, Tracy. Okay. So I love that. And that's what I'd always say. If they're
Yeah. Yeah.
engaged,
Yeah,
they're
Right.
learning.
yeah,
But, okay, our play skills have changed. Our children, their creativity, their curiosity maybe isn't what it was. So, what would you say to reassure us if I collaboratively set up a play environment with my
yeah,
fifth and sixth graders and we put out all our resources
yeah,
and I see children that are not engaging and I see children that are bored
yeah.
and not engaged? What would your take on that be initially?
Well, I think, you have to look at children's context. I mean, it's like if I don't know, if you've been eating spuds all your life and you've suddenly given a plate of rice and you're like, "Oh, okay, it's about a kind of a slow introduction, isn't it?" And it's not about not saying, "Oh, well, all those potatoes were rubbish. This is what you want to do now." It's about, recognizing, okay, that's been a really important part of your life, but like, would you fancy trying this? And it's about kind of, I think, setting up an environment that encourages children to try. And so part of that is not you making them feel bad about what they already do or what they've already done. It's about kind of opening up opportunities. It's about, I think, in that situation, what I would do, it's about me valuing that, what you're
Mm.
offering. And when I engage with whatever is on offer, and, we all know that relationships are really important. And the best teachers are individuals who build relationships where children, they want you to like them. How you feel about them matters to them.
Yeah.
And so that's, I think, the really true way we lead children is, when we have a significant relationship, we like each other. It's like, anybody we never work their meat. And so we kind of not only do things for people we like, but we want to be involved with people that we like, and we move along with people. It's easier to bring people with us, isn't it, than to make them do or force them or threaten or whatever. It's much easier to bring people along with you. And so how do you bring people along? Well, how do you get them to do this thing? Well, you do it as well, so
Yeah.
that's part of it, I think, Helena. But I do think that environment is really important. Like if I'm looking at it through an early childhood lens, which of course I do with everything, enabling environments are really important. And enabling environments is so much about interactions, as much as about the physicality of a space or what's in that space. And we all know that, the affordances that we give, that we provide for children, the way we speak to each other, the way we consider each other, and how we value each other's opinions really matters. Um, so I think building an enabling environment where, hey, you have a group of fifth and sixth class children and you've presented something and they're not feeling it, well then you look at your environment and but all parts of the environment. So not just the fact that you've put that thing in front of them, they're not engaging with it. Okay, it's well, what else is going on? Part of what's going on is, your engagement with them and with the object. Lenz Takuchi, who is another fantastic researcher who talks about um, the interaction between people and the environment, but also the interaction between people, environment, and objects in the environment, and how each one is as important as the other. And very, very, very heavy stuff, but really, really interesting. And she really, I think, makes clear that when it comes to enabling environments, each of those elements is really important. So the individuals in it, the physical space, and the objects, and as we say, the affordances is what I hate to use the word allowed, what people are
Mhm.
allowed, how they're allowed
Mm.
to engage with those things. So I think that
Yeah.
was a very waffly answer to your question. I don't even know if I answered your question.
No.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it 100% did. It's
And I think as well, it comes back to what you said about how play has changed.
Yeah,
Our children now, the fifth and sixth classes, have played very differently to maybe we would have
yeah,
played.
yeah,
But when we put something out that we would have played with, they haven't experienced that. So
yeah,
it's about taking those slow steps, isn't it?
totally. Yeah,
Getting used to something new. And,
yeah,
I love what you say about the relationships and the engagement. Like I would put stuff down and I'll sit there and I'll chat away to them. Like, well, did you see the match last night? Or, whatever
yeah,
it is. And we're doing the Play Doh or whatever that they've kind of said they're too cool for. And all
yeah,
of a sudden you realize that they've started and like what you're making there. I like that. Well, how are you doing that? Or, and they just get down to it when
absolutely.
they're having a chat, don't they?
yeah,
Yeah. And I
yeah,
think something else that's really important, Gillian, is like so many things that you said there. So for a start, you do it. Like I say to my students all the time, I see students, sit and watching children play. No, you sit beside them and have a go as well. And also like, you don't kind of sit in front of them, and you don't want to be in an instructional pose. You want to
yeah.
be in a collaborative pose. Like, so we're doing it together. So it just, you said there, you're sitting beside them, having an old chat. And that's really important as well, is to
Yeah,
make
like
it
sit on the
as
floor.
natural as possible. Yeah. You like, not teacher voice, or whatever. It's like, we're in this together, or we're doing this together. So
Yeah.
that's really important. So so many things come to my head at the same time. Julian, what else did you say there? Oh, I don't know. It'll come back to me in a minute. But
Engage with
Oh, what
it
I
when they're
said was,
chatting.
how play has changed. That
yeah,
it
yeah,
may that they've never experienced before, and it may be that kind of concepts that this is for younger kids. Like we're
Yeah.
15.
Yeah.
So what's
Yeah.
this about?
Yeah, oh, that's a
Yeah.
big thing, yeah, and of course, we all know as children get older, and especially in their 5th and 6th class, like, top yeah, oldest in school, they know everything, and so, like, too cool for school and all that, and there is very much, like, it's like when younger children, um, whether they're a boy or a girl is something that they learn really quickly whether they're a boy or a girl. And at a certain stage with young children, um, they begin to kind of play in same gender groups or same sex groups for a certain period of time. For boys, a big part of being a boy is not being a girl. So,
Yeah.
that's something that is kind of similar to that idea of older children not being younger children. Do you know what I mean? That you've reached a stage level where you're the expert, or you're the knowledgeable one, or you're the older one, or you're the mature one. And so when they're introduced to things like Play-Doh, it's like, oh, yeah, that's for babies. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So very much. But what happens is, as you say, Julian, is once they start engaging and having a go, it's great fun. It's great crack. Definitely one of my favorite things to do as well is Play-Doh. And I think that engaging in Play-Doh is so therapeutic. Not
Mm.
necessarily making anything, but just kind of manipulating it. But it's great for those side by side conversations. It's really
Yeah.
good for that. Just kind of chatting and teasing things out of people, because it just kind of centers you, doesn't it? And it's relaxing, and it's like non-threatening. It's kind of low energy, and it sets people up for conversation, I think, and for chats.
You framed that so beautifully because I used to, we'd make Play-Doh back in fifth and sixth for messy play. And I'll be honest, I used to struggle so much with just letting it be playing with Play-Doh,
Yeah.
with not having
Mm,
a focus or a purpose or what's your plan? What are you going to make
Yeah.
with your Play-Doh? Like, but what you said there,
yeah.
it's so meaningful in terms of just playing with something and
But I
purposeless,
think as
but all
well, though, we
mm,
are so concerned as teachers that I have to have a learning outcome. If the principal or the inspector or whoever comes into the classroom, how can I justify what I'm doing? But
Yeah.
there actually is so much. I may not have an absolute direct learning outcome that this is linked to,
Mm,
but we're working on oral language. We're working on social skills. We're developing relationships. Being well is a key competency of the new curriculum. We are
mm,
being well in our classroom. We're developing all of that. So I think it's about being able to stand over what you're doing,
mm,
and we're doing Play-Doh. We're having a bit of crack. We made the Play-Doh,
mm,
but we're being well. We're using our oral language. I'm developing my relationships. I'm developing that sense of safety, that lovely safe environment where it's okay to make
mm.
mistakes and to learn. No, what you said there earlier, Tracy, about not always having to have a learning outcome. Play happens and play will happen on its own. Learning won't always happen on its own. So learning will happen through the play, and you'll
Yeah.
find actually learning outcome without meaning to.
Yeah.
That lovely safe so I think as educators we have to be confident in what we're doing and be able to say, there's loads of value to this. It might not be
Mm,
this learning outcome, but there's loads of value. And as parents, we have to be able to say, sitting with my child and don't mind the laundry and just do the Play-Doh and have the chats with them and engage with them. It's just so valuable, and
yeah.
it's the best thing we can do for them.
Totally is. And, with very young children, which I would have worked with, and, obviously my students are going to work with, a really important message that I try to give them is, um, there's something really special about being in the moment with the child, and
Mhm.
just being in the moment. And so sometimes, you can ruin a moment by talking, or, by asking what shape or what color or whatever, and
mm,
just being in the moment is good enough. And
yeah,
when you're in the moment with a child and you're really doing the same thing that they're doing and enjoying being with them, you're giving them two key messages. And the first message is, value what you're doing because I'm doing it as well. And so that automatically builds their confidence and their self-esteem. And the other message that you're giving them is, and I value you as well because I'm here in this moment with you. And again,
mm,
that automatically builds their confidence and self-esteem.
mm,
Um, and part of that, as you both rightly have said, is about being confident in what you're doing and standing over what you're doing. And sometimes it's about, I think, not producing outcomes or not showing outcomes. Because I think what's happened with me throughout my career is that thankfully, this is going to sound very vain, and I don't mean it to sound vain, but I've thankfully always had a good influence on children, or I've been a good motivator for children. And sometimes when children present with, behaviours of concern, we'll say, I have been the go-to person to help children with that. And I think that's probably my superpower, or my main skill is just really enjoying playing with them,
Yeah.
and also enjoying being with them. At no
Yeah.
point did I ever see a child walk through the door and go, "Oh God, here's so and so."
Yeah.
I've always been happy to see whatever child comes into me, and I can honestly say that any child I've ever worked with has not only made me a better teacher, they've made me a better person. And I value the time I spend with children, and I think that's really important. It has been really important for me, I think. And you can't really do that unless you value play. You can't really, I think, make significant connections with children unless you have some value for play. And really, unless you have significant value for play, because it's just kind of such an important thing in their lives. And I also want to say, like, play is actually really important in everybody's lives. It's just it looks a little bit different as you get older. I mean, play translates into like a bit of crack. Your sense of playfulness is, essentially what as an adult is, the person that you have a bit of fun with and you have a bit of crack with. And that's like is, as I've said earlier today, is a currency that's just invaluable. To have that in your skill set is just you just can't buy it. And I think it's actually something that's also kind of not is as common as it used to be, is that sense of playfulness and crack, and letting things go, and being able to, maybe slag somebody and take a slag, and not for it to turn into some, humongous,
Yeah.
a horrible argument. Play is that, having a bit of crack when you're older, and that's definitely served me well as well, I think.
Yeah,
And
we've become very serious, haven't we? Things are
yeah,
serious, things are, everything is less playful.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
bringing that playfulness is so important.
Oh, it is, and that's what I was mentioned earlier about activities. Because sometimes when I go and I see students, I can see when it's happened. So I can see like they've set up an activity. So I'm doing placement supervision, so I'm going out to see them in practice, and I'm not saying anything to students I haven't said to them. So I can see I walk in and they've set up an activity and they're waiting for me to get there. So they're waiting. So I'm looking at it, they start the activity, and the activity might be Play-Doh, or it might be some kind of painting or printing or something like that. But I can see like the tension. They're waiting, and I'm in it. Okay, okay, do the activity, do the activity. And I try to say to them, like, that's not what play is about at all. I don't want to see activities. The last thing I want to see is an activity, because as I said, an activity is something that's organized by an adult. What I want to see is a sense of playfulness. And that might be, you might not open your mouth, but you might be making faces, or giving a little bit of you might be giving somebody a hug, or, and here's an interesting question for you too. And this is something that I've thought about. So, play is always made better by a sense of playfulness. Without a doubt, we all have to agree that some people have a greater capacity for playfulness than others. And
Mhm.
so, do you think that there are people who will always struggle to, engage and play? Will they ever get that sense of playfulness? Is it an incapacity, or can it be built on? What do you think?
I would say yes, because when you look at the work of the Plan Accept, we have this biological drive for play.
Mhm,
So and I would say would be interesting because if a child was reared in an environment where there was no play,
mhm.
or parents maybe lost touch with their playfulness, or they were around adults, yeah, I'd imagine that would impact them
Yeah. And
because we're wired
mm,
for it.
yeah,
If we're in an environment where that was nurtured,
yeah,
because we were typically, if we've, I suppose, had typical childhoods, there's plenty of trauma mixed in because that's just
yeah,
part of child.
yeah, yeah,
That would say that, yeah, we all, and what I love is it's our playfulness is unique. I'm so grateful that when I went to train as a play therapist, that
yeah.
was a huge focus, was helping us reconnect with our own playfulness. And it's a gift. Like, I
Mm,
feel like I'm so privileged that I'm more playful now, and I'm
mhm.
still learning, I'm still growing
Yeah,
my play.
Yeah.
because, well, it's a disposition, so we can grow it. What do you
Mm.
think, Gillian?
Mm.
I think as children, we have that playfulness in us. And I do think it's lost. It's pushed down. I know, like, I would be a very playful person. I love the silliness. And I think for a little while I pushed it down as well because there was that sense of being professional. And I felt that other people didn't take me as seriously as possibly I wanted to be taken because I love sparkle and I love
Yeah.
glitter and I love the crack and I love fun and but you're not very professional. So I think maybe I would have suppressed that a little bit because of coming from others who've
Yeah.
probably suppressed it as well. So I think I've certainly embraced it. I don't care what other people think. I will wear this person, I will have the crack. That's my playfulness. But I definitely think some people don't take me as seriously as I would like to be taken
Yeah.
seriously. If some people think that, God, if you're being silly now, you're not, you must be great at your job or you need to be
Yeah.
serious. So I think we have it in us, but we lose it as adults. I
Yeah.
think a lot of people lose it as adults.
Yeah.
And I think some people are lucky enough to either keep it or find it, but I think we have it in us. You know, you do see children, when do they lose it? You know, is it with the introduction of devices? Is it with going
Mm.
to secondary school? When do they lose that playfulness? What do
It's because they
adults
stop playing.
it's because they
Yeah.
stop playing.
Yeah. Yeah.
If we as educators now create children who don't stop playing, we will create a playful generation of
Yeah.
adults.
Yeah.
What do you
No
think,
pressure,
Tracy?
no pressure. I agree with the
No
2.
pressure.
Yeah, no pressure. And I agree with the 2 of you, and I do actually when you said, Helena, about, I suppose you do have to recognise that there are a lot of parents under serious pressure at the moment, and, if you're worried, it's hard to, to kind of present a front all the time. So, I do think about that, and, I think about the context that children have come from. I just sometimes, I see individuals, parents, and who seem quite serious as individuals, and I just wonder how is play, facilitated in that household, and, you know, like if I think of my own parents, um and like as you said, Helena, plenty of them in this house and or in our house, and and the usual struggles with money and whatever. But their sense of playfulness and their sense of fun um, definitely was like a protective barrier for us. And
Mhm.
also, I think if I think of myself as a young child, my sense of playfulness has helped me to cope. It's been a coping mechanism for me throughout my life, and it's helped me to engage with others when I haven't always found that an easy thing to do. And like I often think, if I look back on myself as a child, like if I as an adult looking at me as a child, I would have said, oh, possibly on the spectrum, definitely dyspraxic and probably ADHD. And I say I don't have any of those diagnoses, but I firmly believe that's part of who I am. It's part of my makeup, and which is why I waffle and go off on tangents. But anyway, so being playful and having fun was a way that it was funny. It was kind of a bit of a snowball effect. If I said something and I made somebody laugh, I'd be like, oh, this, felt good about that. And that was, and like, and people are more inclined, obviously, to spend time with people that, make them laugh and smile and make them feel happy. And so it was a bit of say, a snowball effect where it's like, oh, that, that was good. And so I tried to make people laugh then, and so it kind of built and built and built. And as I said, it also enabled me to play off things I couldn't do or couldn't get right or couldn't manage. So let's say, for instance, in school, in primary school, PE was torturous for me because I just couldn't do anything. I was really uncoordinated, and I couldn't do things that other people seemed to be able to do at the drop of a hat. Like, things like handstands and tumbles and wheels and all that kind of stuff. I just couldn't do it. And so I would attempt to do it, feel really self-conscious and deeply unhappy with the fact that I couldn't do it. But I would joke about it, and it would be kind of laughed off. And like in one way you could look and say that's actually really sad. But it actually really worked for me because it built my capacity for not taking myself too seriously. And, I think that's something that's also worked for me throughout my life.
Mhm.
And, like, if I think of my my general way of communicating with people always has to be through some kind of sense of fun or humor. And even if I was, giving out to me kids, or we're all adults now, and I don't really give out. I'm not a give outy person. But if I had to say something that like I wasn't happy with, or I didn't think was right, like I wouldn't be give you outy. I'd be like, I'd have to present it in a slaggy kind of having a joke way. But they know, I think, you know, they can, what's the translate? They can translate when I actually mean, "Oh, no, hang on a second, I'm not happy with that," or "I don't want you to do that again," or whatever, "That was wrong." That sounds like they're for people, not they're fantastic people, I never have to do that, but if I did in the past, it would be in that way, and that's worked for me as well, I think, because, you know, they're receiving information that potentially could hurt, damage their confidence or hurt their self-esteem. But I don't think they're receiving it like that because of the way it's packaged in that kind of playful way.
Yeah.
And now they could listen to this podcast and go, "What on earth is she doing?" I don't know, but I think anyway that's what's happened. That's what I'm saying has happened, and I'm sticking to that anyway.
But you see, it's down to the connections that you built with them as well, it's that relationship that you have with them as well. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
it's that,
true.
playing with your children develops all those relationships, and that's what the research says. Even, what do they say, 10 minutes a day of just play with your children,
Mm,
and that conflict is so much easier, isn't it?
yeah, yeah.
My husband this evening, and every chair from the kitchen, every cushion from the couches, the floor is lava. The 2 boys, I have a nearly 8-year-old and a just gone 3-year-old, and the 2 boys are hopping around the place, and I was like, "See you later," and he was like, "Bye." It's like lava, and I was like, "You your toast there." So I'd say he's joined in now as well, but, it's all about that connection, and
Yeah.
then if they leave and they don't tidy it up, and I'm like, "Excuse me, the volcano's gone here. Can you tidy this up?" Get it. They're like, "Oh, yeah, sorry. Sorry, I'll do
Yeah,
that now."
yeah.
I'm standing at the bottom of the stairs roaring at them to go, "Come back down."
It's true though, you can give lots of, difficult messages through in a playful way, and it's
Yeah.
received a little bit better, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Definitely. Okay, Tracy,
Yeah,
are you ready for your 5 rapid fire
I
questions?
am, I am. I've already established I'm a waffler, so I don't know how rapid fire they are. They might not be that rapid fire, but go on,
Then
It's
give it a
alright. We
shot.
like it. I like to waffle too.
So, what was your favorite thing to play with as a child?
Apart from the derelict factory.
my absolute favorite was clackers. I don't know if you know what clackers are. So there were 2 wooden balls on 2 strings. You can get kind of plastic ones these days, but these are 2 wooden balls on 2 strings, which were that kind of like this. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
you just did kind of shook them up and down, and the 2 wooden balls hit together and they made a noise. I'd say I drove my family insane. That was my favorite thing to play with. But my favorite game to play was Emmett, my brother, and I. We had this really old mirror, angular mirror, and it had no frame on it. So what we used to do, the two of us, was we'd get the mirror and we'd put it under our nose like this, and we'd walk around the house looking at the mirror and pretend we were walking on the ceiling. It was the best game ever. And like Emmett was here today, and I was telling him I was doing this, and we were having great chats about our play. We were laughing at that. Jesus, we got errors and errors and errors, and it was the simplest thing. And
Yeah.
not only that, when my kids were small, I showed them and they did the same thing. But, yeah, so that there I had to have 2, was that they were the 2 things.
That's so fabulous.
Definitely.
I
Oh my
love
god,
Yeah.
I
that.
must try
Yeah.
that. And if you had a stick to play with, what would it be?
Sword all day long. I would definitely be a sword. Yeah, it was the first thing that came into my head, and I can picture myself doing it, playing with kids all through the years. Yeah, yeah. Definitely a bit of a pirate in me, I think, would have to be a sword.
So, Bob, who nurtured or nurtures your playfulness?
Well, I have to say, I had some really fun. My parents were funny and fun. My dad loved children, and I had some really funny uncles. Oh my God, my students now know their names, and they're the kind of someone who gets their full title. So one of them was called Joey Norris. Like you'd never say Joe, it'd be Joey Norris. He got his full title because he was a bit bold, but he was just really fun. I remember when I was a kid, he brought me in loads of Mars bars, and here's them, they're good for your teeth. No, he was just a bit mad. So he definitely did. And then when I had my own children then, um, my own children definitely kind of reinvigorated my sense of play and playfulness.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And what is a playful habit that you have never grown out of?
I think it's making faces. So sometimes I I I often catch myself doing it, and I sometimes do it if I want to express something and just can't find the words, so I'll make a face, and like, I do it all the time, and sometimes I think I do it really inappropriate times to people I shouldn't make faces at, but it's definitely something I do anyway.
I love that.
Yeah, no.
And what is the small joy that you look forward to every day?
Something I do every day is it reaches a certain point in the day and I light a candle. And I was thinking about this today. Why is this? And I really look forward to lighting that candle. One of the reasons is because it's a sensory experience. It's always a smelly candle, and the light is different. I turn off the lights, have the candle on. And I definitely, talking about the kind of child I was, definitely has kind of had sensory overload at times, and then I was sensory seeking at other times. And so I really enjoy that sensory experience with the candle. But the real thing for me is when that candle lit, that's it. I'm done for the day. I'm sitting on the couch and nothing else is happening. So for me, it's a marker that work is finished and play is finished and it's veg out time. And it's just like, I'm like, if you ask me a question, I'll answer you. But if the candle's lighting, that's it. I'm on the couch and nothing else is happening.
The only question is to you, Coffee.
Yeah.
So you better grasp.
Yeah.
Oh,
So that's me.
Trace, thank you so much. That has just been such a fabulous conversation.
I think we
It was
could both
so
talk to you
interesting.
for hours. You're
Yeah,
Thanks very
just
much.
wonderful to talk to.
yeah,
Thank you. I'm
I
glad.
can have white cheeks from smiling at everything
yeah.
you're saying. It's just so lovely.
We really hope that you enjoyed that episode of The Playful Lens. And we'd like to say a huge thank you to Tracy for taking time to speak with us and share those invaluable insights. As always, we would love to hear from you, so please feel free to comment and let us know what you think. And don't forget to turn on those notifications so you'll never miss an episode, and like and subscribe.